My husband always looked down on me and refused to cooperate in our married life. He would often remind me that I should be grateful to him, a high earner, while belittling me, a vocational school graduate. One day, after telling me I should appreciate what I had in him, he left home. Later, he asked if I was ready to apologize. I told him, "It's more comfortable without you." My name is Annika, and I'm 28 years old. I met my husband, Matthew, through a mutual friend. At the time, I had just graduated from vocational school in the countryside and moved to the city for work. Matthew, who was a city native, offered to show me around. "You must be lost since you're new here. Ask me anything about the place," he said. Grateful for his help, I accepted his offer, especially when I was confused about things like train transfers. Matthew guided me through the city, and I found myself increasingly drawn to him. On his days off, Matthew would take me to popular tourist spots, and we began spending weekends together. Eventually, we started having dinner after work, and it became natural for us to be together. So when he proposed, it felt like the next logical step, and soon we were married. However, after we got married, Matthew's attitude towards me began to change. He started to look down on me, asking, "You're going to keep working after we get married, right?" When I answered that I planned to, given that we had a mortgage to pay, he responded dismissively, "All right, do as you like, but don't slack off on the housework, okay?" I suggested we share the housework since we were both working, but Matthew scoffed at the idea. "Share? Unlike you, a vocational graduate, I have a responsible job. I don't have time for housework," he said. When I pointed out that I worked too, he belittled my job, comparing it to part-time work and implying I was easily replaceable. "My work is far more important than yours," he insisted. Although I disagreed, I didn't want to fight so early in our marriage. I reluctantly took on all the housework as Matthew demanded. I had been living alone for a long time, so I was used to managing household chores. But Matthew's demands only grew more unreasonable. One day, he announced that he would manage all our finances. "I'll give you a monthly allowance for living expenses," he said, handing me just $100. Shocked, I asked if this was just for food, assuming other necessities would be separate. But Matthew was firm. "That's all the money I'm giving you. You can manage with $100 as a housewife, right?" I tried to explain that $100 wasn't enough to cover food, daily necessities, and medical expenses, but Matthew dismissed my concerns. He insisted I could make it work and warned me not to skimp on meals, despite his pickiness about the menu. He would complain if I served anything less than luxurious meals, demanding expensive cuts of meat even though the budget made it impossible. When I asked if we could use some of our savings for living expenses, Matthew grew angry. "The balance is decreasing. I can't increase your allowance," he snapped. When I asked why we weren't saving as much as expected, he avoided the question, suggesting that the $100 I received was still too much. I questioned his spending habits, particularly his late nights out, suspecting it was the cause of our dwindling savings. But Matthew dismissed my concerns, saying his drinking was necessary for business relationships and entertaining. Don't criticize. It became increasingly clear that Matthew was using the money in our joint account however he pleased, without even bothering to check the details. As I looked deeper into our finances, I discovered it wasn't just his drinking habits draining our savings. He was also spending money on his hobbies, justifying it as a break from work, and doing whatever he wanted. No wonder our savings were dwindling. Hey, the money in our joint account is what we both contributed when we got married, right? Shouldn't we be saving a bit more? I asked Matthew. He snapped back, "Don't be so noisy. I'm supporting you. You should be grateful to live under a high earner like me." Matthew's salary was $1,500 a month, far from what I consider high. But in his company, he was on the higher end of the pay scale. This inflated his ego, and he convinced himself he was a high earner. "Listen," he continued, "unexpected at the company. I'm juggling many jobs, managing clients, and that's why there are so many entertaining events. It's not my fault the drinking parties have increased. It's just how it is. People are getting laid off left and right, but not me. My competence is needed by the company." His reasoning was entirely selfish, and I finally couldn't hold back any longer. Let me be clear, $1,500 isn't a high salary by today's standards. For your age, it's actually quite low. And if you're saying you're a high earner, then isn't it just that your company's salary level is low? What did you say? Matthew was furious. Also, if you're going drinking for work, The company should be covering it as an expense. It's strange that you're paying for it out of pocket. Well, it's common, isn't it? He replied defensively. And those people who quit, were they really laid off due to restructuring? I pressed. What do you mean? Matthew asked, taken aback. Well, no one explicitly said it's restructuring, but the employees are leaving regularly. Isn't it that everyone hates the company's harsh nature? The salary is low, overtime pay is minimal, and they don't even let you expense business-related drinking. It sounds like your company might be what they call a black company, don't you think? What did you say? Matthew was furious. People like you who work for low wages without questioning anything are valuable to the company in a way. But don't you think you're being used rather than being relied upon? I realized I had said too much, but it was too late. Matthew's face turned bright red, and his shoulders began to shake. You, a country bumpkin and a vocational school graduate, wouldn't understand society. $1,500 is not a low salary, you're just a sore loser. A sore loser? I saw your pay stub the other day. You only made $1,000, he said smugly. Where did you see that? I asked, shocked. The deposit statement was left on the desk. Fool, no matter how much you talk back to me, you still earn less than me. If I don't support you, you can't even live on your own, he said triumphantly. Matthew continued, this is your punishment for defying me. I'll stay at my parents' house for a while. Try living on your own, you'll understand how much you need me. Parents' house? You can't be serious, I said, watching as he quickly packed his things. I'll take both the joint account and my personal account passbooks and cards. You'll manage with just your earnings, won't you? With that, Matthew left, leaving me to live alone. Once I started living on my own, I quickly realized how comfortable it was. There was no one to complain about the menu and I could cook whatever I wanted. Since Matthew was the one who mostly messed up the room, cleaning was a breeze. Without a husband who drank and came home late every night, I didn't have to spend extra money. Was life actually better without him? Just as I was starting to think that, Matthew called. Hey, are you alive? I thought you being so stubborn wouldn't come crying to me, so I called. Have you realized how much you need me? If you apologize now, I might come back, but you'll have to promise not to defy me anymore. You don't have to come back, I responded immediately. Huh? Matthew let out a strange noise, clearly surprised. I realized something after being away from you and being alone. It's better without you. Stop talking nonsense. How do you plan to live on your own? You can't live on $1,000, can you? What you saw wasn't my salary statement but the amount paid for expenses. My company, unlike yours, doesn't skimp on expenses. Expenses, you say? Yes, my salary is $4,000. $4,000? How can you, a vocational school graduate, earn that much? I practiced a lot of practical work at vocational school to become immediately employable, and my company allowed me to obtain many useful certifications. Thanks to those qualifications, I received offers from companies I wanted, and I've been promoted smoothly since I joined. So I think a $4,000 salary is fair, and it's a natural result. How can you, a vocational school graduate, earn more than me, a university graduate? You always look down on vocational school graduates, but Matthew, your university is just a 4-year institution and practically unknown, right? Writing about being from a third-rate university just because it's a 4-year institution doesn't mean you'll be hired by a decent company. Maybe a company with harsh working conditions like yours finds you easy to handle. After all I've done to support you, how can you say that? You don't understand anything. Your salary alone couldn't possibly maintain this lifestyle. No matter how much we save on living expenses, $1,500 can't cover rent, utilities, your drinking expenses, and shopping for hobbies. If it weren't for my salary, we would have gone bankrupt long ago. You never said a word about this before, Matthew stammered. You were the one managing the account, right? I assumed you noticed. I'm surprised you had no sense of urgency, even though the balance was steadily decreasing. I didn't have time to look at that all the time. Both our salaries are our money. Yes, that's true. I didn't care who earned more as long as our savings were growing. I had no problem using my salary for our future, but it seems that my salary wasn't going into savings at all. But all that money was spent on your drinking parties and hobbies, I said, my patience finally wearing thin. I've had enough of that, and I've realized I don't need you anymore. So you don't have to come back. Wait, are you breaking up with me? Matthew's tone suddenly shifted from arrogance to desperation. But if my salary is gone, you won't be able to live, right? It was clear he was becoming frantic. Wait, don't leave me, he pleaded. His sudden change of heart was almost laughable, given how he previously boasted about supporting me. I decided to throw his own words back at him. Well, if you apologize now, I might forgive you, but you'll have to promise not to defy me anymore. I understand. I promise, Matthew stammered. Really? Yes, I'll even increase the living expenses I give you, he added desperately. I couldn't help but laugh at his offer. Give me living expenses? What are you talking about? From now on, you'll be the one doing the housework, so I don't need any living expenses. Me? Doing housework? He asked, incredulous. Yes. You said it yourself. It's only natural for the one who earns less to do the housework. Between your $1,500 and my $4,000, you as a university graduate should be able to figure out who earns less, right? From now on, I'll give you living expenses and you'll do the housework. I'll manage the finances. But housework is a woman's job, right? Matthew tried to argue, clearly struggling with the idea. Oh, are you defying me already? Planning to break the promise? I warned him, my tone firm. I'm ready to divorce any time, you know. Wait, I understand. Matthew finally conceded, agreeing to take on all the housework as I had instructed. After that, I continued making demands. Matthew, no more unpaid overtime from now on. Wait a minute, I can't finish my work without overtime, he protested. There's no need to do unpaid overtime. If you must work extra hours, make sure the company pays you for it. And also, I won't be covering your entertainment expenses anymore. What? But the only money I have to spend freely is the living expenses I get at the beginning of the month. How am I supposed to go out drinking with that? You should be able to get entertainment expenses from the company. Talk to them about that. If you go out for drinks for non-work reasons, I'll consider giving you additional social expenses. Matthew tried to negotiate with his company for overtime pay and entertainment expenses, but his efforts were dismissed. The supervisors who had once praised him with phrases like, "We rely on you," and "You're our star," suddenly turned cold. It was only then that Matthew began to realize his company was far from normal. Annika was right, he admitted to himself. They just wanted an employee who would do unpaid overtime and fund his own entertainment without complaining. Faced with this harsh reality, Matthew decided to start job hunting, but his search was unsuccessful. No company wanted to hire a third-rate university graduate with no qualifications or skills. During interviews, he was frequently told, "If only you had at least one qualification." Having failed miserably in his job search, Matthew turned to me, finally humbled. "The qualifications you have are actually amazing," he admitted. "I've always looked down on you for being a vocational school graduate, but you're far more incredible than I am. I was wrong. I'm sorry for everything." Matthew, who had once been so uncooperative and unreasonable in our married life, had completely changed. He eventually started working part-time at a nearby supermarket. "I'm not as efficient at housework as you are yet, so I chose a place where I can come home early," he said. "From now on, I'll support you from behind." "Thank you, Matthew, but I want you to continue job hunting. We can do the housework together whenever we can. Let's work as a team from now on." "But even if I keep job hunting, it's impossible for me to join a company that pays better than yours," he sighed. "Don't worry about that," I reassured him. "I was always against your idea that the one who doesn't earn does the housework. I just wanted you to understand, so I said the same thing. Matthew, why don't you look for a job you really want to do, without worrying about the money?" After that, Matthew began checking job listings and studying for qualifications during his part-time work. "If I don't have any skills, I thought I'd at least get some qualifications. Annika, can you help me with what I don't understand?" "Yes, of course," I agreed, happy to see this new side of him. Although our relationship had completely flipped from what it was initially, Matthew and I were getting along much better than when we were newlyweds. I found myself liking this new Matthew much more than the old one. Together, we could continue living as a couple, combining our strengths.